from giving the complete bottoms up to the entire organization?
Fortunately, actually, I have a town hall on Monday morning for the entire. So it's almost 3,000 people, some 400 physically, another balance on real time. One thing which we have realized is that 10 years back, when we used to do town hall, it used to be a monologue, 3-4 hours, and share loads of data. And we realized that people lose interest. What we have done is that we have shrunk the format. It's not more than an hour. And we don't talk more than half an hour out there. And rest we open up for Q&A. And this is why I see, by doing this, we are seeing that the engagement in the participation is much way more than when you used to do a kind of a monologue for hours. And people used to literally lose interest that this is okay, leadership will come once in a quarter, they will throw barrage of data which we don't find relevant, values and all those things come back. So now we made it very crisp what happened to last quarter, what is the future for the next quarter, challenges that we are facing, where we need your support, done in 35 to 40 minutes, and then open it for Q&A. And with that, I guess we are seeing much more participation from the employee.
That when we take feedback, do we want to drive a culture of anonymous, that you don't come forward and talk right or bad? Because if we're doing that, we're not helping employees speak up, rather than coming up front and giving the feedback or a suggestion openly. And that's what we've seen in our organization as well. When the Q&A session is going around, it could be something good or bad which is going. And in case somebody puts it anonymous, it's taken, why are you doing this? It's a great question. Why don't you come up front and talk really? That's a question to you all.
But I would say that it's a tricky one, because it is the outcome of the psychological safety which I have created. If they have the safety net, they will open up. And that's something which we're actively
we talk about two-week engagement for a town hall.
Which is
See, as human beings, I also feel, sir, to your point of feedback, most of us underestimate the importance of truth and overestimate the magnitude of harm. So, for example, if I speak up, how will it impact my relationship with my boss? How will it affect my future career progression, direction, projects, and so on? Nothing may happen. It's quite possible. But we have loss aversion, right? Daniel Kahneman has sort of proved that in multiple ways.
It's basically that's where the truth comes out, actually, when it is done anonymously. And then we can have these smaller groups where people open up a little bit more. Actually, in a larger group, people tend to be a bit circumspect.
Well, that's the ideal way to be.
Yeah, because we're talking about being open and having an open communication. That's the gist of a town hall.
No, and I think it's not only about right or wrong or truth or false, because when you're dealing with a larger audience, how the message lands, right? It's very important. And while the intention of an individual might be very much in place, the articulation of the communication and the perception of the receiver can be very different. The other element, and thanks for bringing in Romal's example as a Deloitte, makes me very happy. The levels of communications are also linked with, let's say, what an individual wants at a various different levels within the organization, and the engagement channel at the employee level, which are, let's say, first 3 to 5 years of career, is very different than mid-level management, than a leadership. Now, if you ask the same question in all three forums, the anonymity and with a disclosure, the kind of input that you will get will vary, significantly vary. Because there is also an expectation that if you are a senior leader of an organization, you are culturally aligned, because you have crossed that path, and hence there is an expectation that the kind of question that you will ask are culturally aligned, progressive, forward-looking, than somebody who's fundamentally questioning something at a junior level. Right? They might ask very different question. Why are we doing this in the first place? This question will never come in a senior leadership.
That may come in what example you gave about Hindustan Unilever. If suppose someone senior person is coming and giving the business feedback, that can be very hard for someone to get that negative feedback in the audience, right? So how do you ensure that person is giving a honest feedback, right? And not a sugar-coated feedback to look nice for everyone, but and still give the feedback, right? So that psychological net, safety net that you have, yes, you can come and talk about anything. And it comes more challenging with the senior as you become more senior, because then you are expected to address the problem. The junior person can come and say, this is what is not working. But when you go in senior, okay, you are expected to answer the problem, address that problem. So, okay, what are you doing? And then you start kind of having that self negotiation going on in your mind, and you don't come out with the question or feedback.
In fact, just coming back to your queries that you have raised now, this is actually the topmost leadership of Hindustan Lever. It's the board members and the leadership who's actually carrying the town hall. Except for the CEO, the rest of the management committee used to call this as a prayer meeting. And why as a prayer meeting? Because they used to pray, saying that the CEO should not really pick you up for giving the feedback.
Exactly. Maybe it's an opportunity. I just wanted to give one example, funny one. When you give that freedom for the audience, for anybody to speak up and ask any questions, again, a very live one, but I don't want to take names. One of the senior leader got up and asked a question to the CEO saying, when are you, and this is in presence to the global leadership, multiple companies, multiple sort of geographies and CEO of every firm, and then the global CEO asking to the local CEO, when will you become a global CEO? Now, the question can be very genuine, but look at the forum and, implications that does not necessarily land well, and hence controlling such narrative also at times becomes very practical, and hence I think it is very important to have that balance, right? To give that freedom at the same time, how do you make that the overall? Yeah.
In fact, I would like to really do the connecting of the dots. You're talking about anonymity, right? Here is the senior most leadership of one of the largest organizations who doesn't want to be picked up to give the feedback, right? And when it is anonymous, you see the number of questions which really come up is very different, is very direct. And those are the ones which are very difficult to really handle by the management.
So if I had to take the psychological part and the consistency that you mentioned, if you show that you can ask that question about that elephant in the room, very, very difficult, but everyone is interested, but nobody wants to ask that question or dare to ask that question. If someone asks and how you respond to that question and what actions you take afterwards in a consistent manner, that helps to build that psychological safety net, so that it becomes that, okay, it's perfectly okay to ask that difficult question, and there will be no kind of
Done this on this, we've not been able to do on this. Maybe we can talk about it and decide the steps ahead. That's all what people are really looking at. Yeah. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot of times, right? Because we're trying to protect.
I would like to really contradict in this.
Go ahead, please.
These are some town halls that we have been attending as the leadership of one of the multinational banks. Every question that really comes up over there is picked up by HR and meticulously followed up.
Excellent.
To an extent that the organizational policy changes based on the number of people are actually putting up those particular feedback.
No, which is excellent. So that's exactly what I'm saying, sir. I'm not saying people are wanting solutions there and then. They're wanting a voice to be heard, which can be later taken up in forums in order to eventually solve the problems. So I'm not saying we're not solving the problems. What I'm saying is people are not wanting you to have that superheroic image of a great CEO or a leader who knows it all. They want to raise out and relevant people to take action, right? Because they won't get those voices heard otherwise anywhere else in the routine job of things. So I'm with you, actually.
Because she's saying the same thing. And in today's world, gone are those days that are looking towards a charismatic leader.
Absolutely.
Because they are well informed, they are connected in the world. What they want is there a responsible leadership which is actually trying to, empathetic leadership which is actually trying to listen to us And if that's that's the goal actually, if you're able to connect, is it a one-way communication or it is a empathetic listening that you are actually connecting and getting a feedback both? So it's a both-way communication. If you don't establish that channel, I guess the town hall actually fails to meet its intent.
So I will just take a moment to summarize and put it in layer wise, the discussion that we've done. So it started off from communicating the why to the employees first, because if they don't understand and they don't see being a part of the bigger picture, they can actually lose the point of the town hall. And then the important role of formal and informal channels. So what we've been discussing is there is a clarity of the message at the top, there is some noise in the middle, and there's a subtle silence in the bottom. Okay, if that's there, then the town hall usually goes waste. Okay, so we are actually talking about anonymous feedback from the bottom to top, so that the decision does not go down as a gush down from the top to bottom, which is an interesting way of communication. We've also talked about some formal and informal channels, because no matter how formally we communicate it and how powerfully we communicate it, there will be informal channels like water cooler talks or chai sutta breaks where the actual feedback comes into. And if we don't capture that, we lose the essence of how do we take this forward. Also, the rituals in terms of taking feedback. I would like to add one last point and summarize this all up is I reiterate in the class that as humans, we think and we believe that we are open to feedback, but we are not. Okay, we are not. And sometimes you might go ahead and say, oh, give me feedback, but we associate personally with the feedback and we do not objectively look at it, depersonalizing the feedback, and that hurts. Therefore, the employees are also little vigilant in voicing out the concerns because they don't know the repercussions that the leaders might take. So it's a conscious practice of objectively looking at the feedback, thinking that it's not a personal attack on us, but rather areas or scopes of opportunities for improvement. And that in itself can actually summarize how effectively we can bring in and incorporate feedback into, while without becoming personal, and therefore we could make the town halls more effective.